Now, it goes from that just brutal situation. I mean, you imagine 13 hours, but you think you're going to be back in like 45 minutes, right? Hey, I'll run out. We'll help these guys. We'll get some stretchers.
Yeah.
And then you run down there, and it's 13 hours later. You're dehydrated. But he starts to go into some reflections now of what it was like some other parts of the war. And you're going to see he's going to oscillate back and forth as he describes some of this stuff, but it's all really good information and things to think about. Back to the book. When you weren't fighting, the war was pretty good. Mornings were the best time. The terror of the night ended, the patrols and ambushes and duck blinds. Men slept late. When there was snow in the night, it lay smooth and untracked. No industrial smokestack or city soot turning it dour and gray. No vehicles to churn it into slush. It hung, glistening, on the pine branches until the sun, warming as it rose, thawed it into tiny, shining icicles, glistening, melting, drop, drop, drop. Men crawled out of their bunkers into the morning calm, the industrious using entrenching tools to dig away the snow, tidying the trench. So that's the dichotomy of war. Mm-hmm. And he's going to go back and forth on this dichotomy quite a bit.
You know how, I mean, I guarantee you experienced that too, where overall it's just this really junk situation overall. But then all those little, almost like micro pleasures, you know how those little things, they kind of add up and then you kind of miss them. You ever been in that situation?
Never even mind micro. I mean, that's one of the reasons I'm in this chapter. You're going to see like he goes back and forth about what makes it good and what makes it fun. And there's something, and I've talked about this before. There's something so pure about being overseas fighting a war. You don't have to think about anything else. Like you don't think about anything else. And it's just this pure thing that you have that nothing else in the world matters. Yeah. And that feels good. Mm-hmm. I love that feeling.
Yeah. Like, even like if you think back to your, I don't know, some people, they're like, oh yeah, my college days where I was so broke. There's all this like junk stuff and how much better it is now. But you think back on just the small good parts, you know, like I had no
responsibility. You definitely everybody self edits their past and remembers the good stuff more than the bad. Yeah, right. I mean that definitely happens. Yeah, if that didn't happen, you know, I've heard said if that didn't happen, women would never have more than one kid, right? Because giving birth is like a really tough evolution. Yeah. So I'd say, oh no, I don't want to do that again. Yeah. But the reality is, women have all kinds of kids, despite the toughness of that evolution, because they remember the good stuff.
Yeah, especially, I mean, sometimes if they kind of leave that experience with a bad idea of it, then they'll self-edit the other way. Like, oh, it was just junk. But, you know, those times when it's like we always kind of miss those times.
Well, it's the same thing. There's all kinds of, when you're on deployment, there's all kinds of frustrations and there's infighting and there's all these problems. And then you get back and everyone hates each other. And you get back, everyone's like, oh, yeah. You've set all that stuff aside.
Yeah. Yeah, when if you figure when you go on deployment, if you make it back and you know and get back, it's like you've done a good thing. You know, to go fight for your country is a good thing, straight up. So you know that. So it's pretty rare you're going to emerge thinking, "Oh man, we shouldn't have done that," kind of thing.
Yeah, no, you know? That's definitely not a feeling.
I mean, overall. So that's one of those things where, it's the way you're going to self-edit is going to be in the good way. Yeah. You know, so you're going to be like, oh, I miss that time, even though it was miserable.
And I think what's cool is I think you're going to hear this here. He goes back and forth. Like he's definitely self-editing some of the good stuff, but he's also going right into some of his description, and we'll get to it here in a minute. I think it's in this section, but he's talking about like when the night comes, and it's awesome. We'll get there in a minute. Back to the book. Princeton, like most regulars, made a fetish of shaving daily. Water was always short. We melted snow in canteen cups over Coleman stoves and parceled it out from 5-gallon jerry cans. Water maybe is the heaviest thing Marines ever have to carry. We never washed. There wasn't water for that. I suppose we smelled pretty bad, but you stopped noticing. The air in the bunkers, lighted by candles and warmed by Coleman stoves, was so foul that you spit soot, and body odor didn't really register. You never changed clothes except for socks. I had 2 pairs of heavy wool socks, and I tried to change every day. The socks you put on were filthy, but after 24 hours they were dry, the sweat evaporated. Frozen feet were a continual fear. We all knew the horror stories from the winter before, men who lost toes or an entire foot, sometimes both feet. If you could somehow keep your feet dry, the cold wasn't as dangerous. You might, if the Koreans didn't get you, or a mine or an accidental discharge or a short round, survive the winter with limbs intact. How the socks smelled didn't matter, only if they were dry. And there's a part in the book that I didn't talk about, that I didn't highlight. At least I don't think I did. But they're showing them a film to get ready to go to Korea, and the film is of a guy with frostbitten toes. And the surgeon, he's not even using a knife. He's just, the toes are just, they're just coming off, like breaking off a twig off a branch. Mm-hmm. And you know, that kind of thing right there will make you try and keep your feet dry. Yeah. Back to the book. If I had one, I smoked a cigar, chewing the stub into pulp, spitting juice onto the snow at my feet, onto my thermal boots. It didn't matter which. There were no inspections up here, none of the garrison chicken shit you lived with at Quantico or Pendleton or even in reserve. These were good times too. Afternoons looking at the mountains and the snow and smoking and spitting with no one to complain, scratching yourself where you itched, your groin or your belly or wherever. In a country this lovely, unless someone was shooting at you or sending you out on patrol, if you could stay warm and dry and you knew there was one more can of sweet peaches or pears back in the bunker, the war wasn't so bad. So that's awesome. That's what I'm talking about. You're over there. It's weird because there's all kinds of rules when you're in combat, but they're different rules. And the rules of normal life, they don't apply anymore. And you just do whatever you want in a lot of cases. You know, oh, this isn't working, smash it. Oh, I don't like this, I'm going to break it. Right. Oh, there's something over there, shoot at it. It's fun. It's awesome. And then, like he's literally talking about, you know, just scratching yourself. Like it's just man's world, right? I mean, at least it was for me. Just a bunch of guys hanging out with a cool job. And so it's awesome. It's fun. Now things you're going to see, this is that paragraph that I was talking about. It's awesome. Then by 2:30 or 2:45 in the afternoon, the sun would start to fall toward the ridge line. And the wind out of Siberia would pick up, and I would begin to shiver, not just from the cold, but knowing that the good time was nearing its end, that darkness was coming, the dark and the night and the terrible cold, and unless we were lucky, the fighting. I hated to see the dusk come. In combat, there are no beautiful sunsets. A falling sun is a warning of the night. The shadows lengthen, and the temperature falls, and the wind seeks you out. Men begin to move around now, restless, nervy, busying themselves with chores to take their minds off the night, breaking down weapons one more time for cleaning, rearranging their grenades and bringing in the sleeping bags left out for a day's airing, heating a supper of lima beans and ham before dark. Once the night comes, there may not be time. Once the darkness falls, the good times are past. The pleasant indolence, the contemplation of the day is gone. By 4:30, there is no more sun, and then only a swift dusk, and then the real night, cold and frightening, and too often deadly. Yeah, this is something else to think about. This is like a daily reminder to me because I always watch the sunset if I have the opportunity. Yeah. But like I reread this book for the podcast, and so lately now when I'm watching the sunset, this is what I'm thinking about what these guys were thinking. And it's all nice and pretty here in California to watch the sunset. It's not always like that.
Do you think that kind of robs you of the experience here, or do you think it adds to it?
I think it adds to it 100% because I'm not in this reality. I'm not in their reality. Right. I'm in my reality. Sunset means looks nice. The wind calms down. You get to see a beautiful sky. Mm-hmm. That's what sunset is. But I get to contrast that with what these guys experienced, with the true darkness coming and what that meant to them, the fear that they were gonna face every single night. Yeah. And it's amazing that every single day they'd wake up and enjoy that day. Yeah, they'd enjoy that icicles dripping water, and they would relish that. Mm-hmm. Even with the imminent darkness coming, they relished what they could. Mm. And I think that's a good lesson for anybody to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If you can manage to do that, not only does it keep things in perspective, but it'll enhance your experience,
Exactly. You got to know the darkness.
Got it.
Back to the book. If you've never been to war, and this is going back to us oscillating a little bit in the other direction about the good times. If you've never been to war, you cannot realize that some of it, not all of it, of course, but some of it is such sheer boyish fun. You lived outdoors. You were physically active. You shared the boisterous camaraderie of other young men. You shed fat and put on sinew and muscle. Except for those nagging minor hurts, you were clear-eyed and generally healthy, and your body responded instantly and instinctively whenever called upon. You slept like the dead. Not even the dull menu of the ration box killed appetite. You saw the dawn and the night and the stars and came to calculate time and date by the phases of the moon. And on those rare days of thaw, you heard the gurgle of running water under the snow heading toward the valley and the sea. You smelled the pines and listened to the wind, and you could sense when the snow was coming and knew to the instant when the sun would rise and when the sun would set. A city boy, I was falling in love with the country, those first months in the hills. If only I could get home to tell about it. I hoped I would live until spring. So that's the other side of it. And I completely agree with it. You're so focused and you're with your guys and there's nothing else to worry about and you're all working towards a common goal and it's awesome. That's just the dichotomy of war.